Stop gambling or making hiring decisions based on gut instincts. Precision hiring isn't a luxury. It's the single best way to build a high-performing team that scales without drama, disruption, and debilitating increased costs. I'm John Pike, and after placing high performers for some of the top brands in the world, I've developed a method that eliminates the costly, frustrating guesswork of hiring and replaces it with certainty. In this video, I'll reveal how you use psychometric data to make hiring almost surgical in its precision. Let's take a look at psychometric diagnosis. In any performance-driven business, people problems are the biggest expense and also can be the hardest to solve. Skill gaps can be trained, strategy can be adjusted, but when your people are misaligned with their roles, misunderstood by their leaders, or misread by their peers, no amount of meeting or motivation will fix the issue. That's why we don't start with resumes, interviews, or even instincts. We start with data. Because without the right data, you're just another person with an opinion. Psychometric diagnosis is the practice of using validated behavioral and cognitive science to uncover how a person is wired. Things like how they think, what drives them, how they respond to pressure, why they make the decisions they do. It's not merely personality profiling. It's not just who are you. It's a very holistic system that answers a more important question. How do you perform, grow, and thrive under real-world conditions? What is psychometric diagnosis? Psychometrics refers to the field of study concerned with the theory and technique of psychological measurement. In practical terms, it means using science-backed assessments to measure how someone processes information and also their innate talents or abilities, how someone prefers to act and communicate in terms of their behavioral traits, what someone is motivated by and what they value, which has to do with their motivation and drive, and also how someone prioritizes and chooses as it relates to decision-making patterns. And perhaps one of the most important dimensions of all are their emotional tendencies or their emotional intelligence, which has to do with how they regulate and react and respond in situations. A complete psychometric diagnosis gives leaders and business owners a precise view of their people that they can't get from any other mechanisms or methods. Not just how they show up on a good day, but how they operate under stress, navigate amongst ambiguity, handle stressors like conflict, and also respond to leadership. For business owners aspiring to scale themselves out of the day-to-day operations, understanding talent at a deeper level becomes absolutely non-negotiable. This understanding must go beyond subjectivity and intuition, experience, or gut feelings. It must be informed by a systematic scientific view of how people think, act, decide, and perform. But while the term psychometric often brings to mind surface-level personality quizzes, true psychometric diagnosis is rigorous, multidimensional, and rooted in validated psychological theory. It provides a structured way to uncover how a person perceives the world, processes information, communicates, handles stress, makes decisions, and is likely to perform in various environments. I might add that these are all dynamics that are hidden to the naked eye in an interview that are below the surface that you can only access with these advanced analytics. Why it matters is that without psychometric insight, most organizations are operating in the dark. They're throwing darts and rolling the dice when it comes to hiring. They coach based on assumptions. They promote based on tenure or likability. And when something breaks, for example, when a top performer burns out or a new hire flakes out or a high potential leader turns toxic, They're simply not in a position to be able to reconcile that and to salvage that. They react too late. With psychometric diagnosis embedded into the business, you create an always-on radar for accurately matching people to the right roles so that the alignment is precise based on their natural abilities, strengths, and talents. You're able to coach individuals based on how they're wired so that they will have the highest level of receptivity to whatever it is you have to say. Also, it's absolutely critical for spotting disengagement, misalignment, or even for determining flight risks before they actually leave the company. In addition, building complementary teams with minimal friction by having these insights. Designing feedback, communication, and development systems that actually stick. For entrepreneurs or founder-led businesses and leaders, psychometric insight is often the missing link between a hands-on operator and a scalable organization. Without it, founders rely on instincts to make their people decisions, but instincts don't scale. They're personal, not transferable. By embedding a system of psychometric diagnostics, entrepreneurs, founder owners, leaders can begin to delegate with supreme confidence, knowing that the people that they're delegating the things to are aligned and that their strengths matches exactly what demands of that role. They can coach with clarity. They can personalize their communication. They can scale their culture, not just compliance. They can also predict risk instead of reacting to problems. Ultimately, psychometrics move talent operations from reactive and subjective to proactive and very precise. Let's take a look at some of the common pitfalls. Many organizations use assessments, but they use them either in an incomplete manner or very poorly. They choose assessments that don't have a high degree of validation or reliability. They use them just to cover kind of surface level things, like for labeling purposes, like you were a high I or a high D, but not really for development purposes. They misinterpret personality for skill. They skip deeper measures like the vital aspect of axiology. They treat data as a one-time event versus an ongoing lens. These missteps lead to what we call blind spots. For example, a strong communicator gets labeled as a natural leader, but lacks the decision-making structure and actually does not want anything to do with being responsible or being accountable for the results of other people. So they would not be somebody that would be good for promotion purposes. A hardworking salesperson gets promoted to manager, but crumbles under relational pressure. A talented hire flames out not because they lack the skills, but because they weren't understood. To use psychometrics effectively, several factors must be addressed. First, validity and reliability. Choose assessments with robust psychometric properties, not just pop psychology appeal. Next, interpretation. Ensure managers and leaders are trained in reading and also how to apply the data in their day-to-day role interacting with all of their followers. Ethics. Be transparent with employees about how the data is used, stored, interpreted, and also who has access to it. Integration. Use assessment data in real workflows, hiring, one-on-ones, career mapping, not just once a year. The real power of psychometrics is not the data itself, but how that data shapes decisions on how to provide the most compelling work environment for each person. The missing piece is axiology. Most assessment systems stop at behavior or motivation, but behavior is what you see. It's surface level. What's missing is why people behave the way they do. That's where axiology, the science of value judgment, comes in. Axiology evaluates the way individuals make decisions process value hierarchies, and respond to ethical or practical challenges. It also reveals the internal frameworks that govern judgment, prioritization, and execution. When paired with cognitive and behavioral data, this deeper layer creates a full stack profile of performance potential that, simply put, is hidden in an interview and below the surface and cannot be accessed any other way. In short, we don't just measure how someone acts, we measure how they think. How they're more likely to think in different situations, in specific environments, and in reaction to different stimuli. The key is moving from instinct to intelligence. Psychometric diagnosis is not about boxing people in, it's about actually freeing them up. When we understand how someone is wired, how they think, select, choose, grow, we can create the conditions that are ideal for them to succeed. We stop guessing. We stop projecting. We start designing systems, conversations, and career paths that work with human nature, not against it. In a business world where people are the only truly sustainable advantage, seeing people clearly is no longer optional. It's the foundation of performance, alignment, and scale. For business owners and leaders looking to step out of the daily grind and build a company that runs on clarity, not chaos, psychometric diagnosis isn't just a competitive advantage. It's a leadership imperative. Let's take a look at psychometrics and the owner's escape. The most effective leaders don't guess. They diagnose. Psychometric diagnosis transforms people operations from reactive to proactive, from generic to personalized, from hopeful to precise. It removes bias from hiring, adds clarity to coaching, and gives leaders the ultimate competitive advantage: understanding. Not just understanding their team, but understanding how to activate them, how to bring out the best in them for them to reach their full potential. That's what makes psychometric diagnosis a foundational pillar of performance. It's not merely a box to check. It is the lens through which every other talent decision should be viewed. In a world where human capital is your greatest investment, it's the one place you cannot afford to wing it. Want to see exactly how we decode talent in real time? Click the link in the description